able to. There's like a contraption beside me. It's very close to me, which I just realized. Welcome, folks. Can everybody on the line hear us? Rodrigo, you're the only face, so if you can hear us, then we're all set. Perfect. Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Guelph Public Library Board meeting of September 25th, our first meeting after summer vacation. So we'll all go around the table and everybody can talk what they did on their summer. Yeah. You have me tonight and possibly for the next couple of meetings because our august chair is teaching a course this term. So I apologize in advance for the many things that will go not quite as I would have hoped tonight. So as we so often do, why don't we start off with our First Nations acknowledgement from Steve this evening.
Steve this evening. As we gather, we are reminded that Guelph is situated on land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and currently home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. Today, we acknowledge the Dish with One Spoon Treaty and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation on whose traditional territory we are meeting. Let us be grateful to the generations who have come before us and mindful of the generations to come as we strive to walk together on a path of mutual respect and support.
Thank you, Steve. Any items of note from this summer with respect to our work with our Indigenous neighbors?
Nothing to report, no.
Okay. And then Carly, over to you for the Guelph Public Library values.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the library and what it means to me. So I grew up in the Guelph Public Library. I've been coming here since I was like probably an infant. I don't know how old. And I've participated all the way through in different programming. So I think I've heard Robert Munch read here, and later on in my youth, I was always part of the summer book clubs, and one time won the summer book club prize because I read a lot of the books and put in sort of entries, which required you to write a summary of the books you read. And of course, at the time, I had a pretty high reading level, but I was reading like short little books. So like I was writing these tiny little stuff about, like short books. So I was reading a lot. And that's what I think I won.
So what was the gap between how long your summaries were and how long the books were?
Yeah.
It's still longer?
To be honest, I would think at one point I was playing a volume game, like, Babysitter's Club, like those are nice and short, Sweet Valley High. That was the age that I remember really being into the book life. So I could probably read like 3 or 4 of those. So I had a high volume going at that age. And my love for libraries has never really slowed down. I lived abroad for many years, and every time I went to a new city or lived in a new city, the first place that I would go was the library, because oftentimes, like, the language that I was learning or speaking, it wasn't my first language, and it was a really great way for me to learn about the community and connect with people and resources in the community. And so I've visited libraries all over the world, and when I moved back to Canada about 8 years ago now, it's 9, I was spending a lot of time here because I was reintegrating into this community and learning how to be Canadian again after living abroad for 7 years. And during that time, I was sitting, doing some quiet work or maybe reading the paper or something, because I think this is where I got my start with my business as well. And I heard this, this spirited woman sitting at the film reader, and she was looking through something, and she was speaking to I think a librarian, and she was saying, the people at the computer lab are making so much noise. And I'm just she was trying to do some research, quiet research, but she couldn't get away from it because this is the only place where the film readers existed. And I, at that point, was why are the film readers right beside the computer lab? And I think that was really what kind of kick-started me into wanting to be on the board, because I was like, why don't we have a separate computer lab? At Carleton, I went to university there, and when I was in France, they were just building media tech, wasn't even libraries, they're building these media centers, and libraries are far, you travel the world, you'll know that like libraries are like hearts of the community and they're symbols of how people connect. And when I came here, I was like, well, why don't we have one of those? Like, I think we deserve it because it's a great town. It's very progressive. We have a university. And I wrote a letter and then I kept writing letters and I applied to be on the board and I've always been rooting for the new library and all of the great things that are done underneath this roof. And it's kind of cool to kind of come back full circle to a place where I spent my childhood and to sit in this room and get to know all of you and trying to make this community a little bit of a better place to live in, so.
Excellent, thank you. The thing I like the most is, I hope those letters go right to Steve. I hope people thanks right to Steve.
I filed them all away.
Steve has a little drawer. So before we move on, I wanted to share two things. So one, because we're now in the minutes, I was at the book sale this weekend, which I imagine a fair number of you are. So I think it would be apt if we thanked our friends at the Friends of the Library for their continued hard work on behalf of the good work that happens here. I bought an obscene amount of books, yeah, the problem is I don't know if I balanced it out right, because I donated a bunch, but I don't know if I got the balance right. But my wife didn't see how many I donated out, so I don't know that she's sure, like, the mismatch came back, and then I got them into the basement to the shelf pretty quickly, so I think it's okay. The other thing, the more serious thing I wanted to share with you folks is, and something Carly said made me think of it. So a couple of weeks ago, I mean, I come in, this is the branch I use, even though I live very close to the west. I just like coming down, I like seeing people, and I was here maybe 2 or 3 Fridays ago, and one of the patrons at the library, who I think he was new to town and he was experiencing some strife in his life that can happen to all of us. And I really saw the staff that were working that day do like a really amazing job of supporting this gentleman. And then Dan and Carolyn came out, and this guy was really well supported, and we got engaged with the downtown support, and it was just very seamless for a guy who was really in a fair amount of crisis, I think. And so I thought that would be a nice thing to share as we kind of get back into the library, that this just really is a place that is welcoming to people. And I think we, as a board, should never forget like all the things that happen here, 30 days between our meetings, that like there is always ongoing and very good work that happens here, not on behalf of us, but that our work supports. So just a little story. See, I told you one story from summer vacation. Okay, let's get into the meat of things here, folks. So approval of agenda. I hope everyone's had a chance to look at it. Any items of concern, additions, amendments?
I have a question about the operating variance report when we get to it.
Sure. So let's put a pause on that till we get to the consent agenda, and then we'll pull that back. No problem. Okay, with that in mind, could I get a motion then to approve the agenda? Carly and then Claire. Where are you copying those from? I'll have to get those.
So you just
Oh,
have to
is Bartles?
change their names.
Yep.
So that change.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Okay, apologies for non-attendance. I have regrets this evening, of course, from Randlin and from Vivian, jet setting on the continent somewhere. Pecuniary interests. Anyone? Any takers? Someday I'm gonna get one of those. Okay. So consent agenda, I have the operating variance report from Claire to come off for discussion. Anything else from anyone on the consent agenda? Okay, then what I will ask for is a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Candace and then Claire. Claire, why don't you go ahead with your question, and Dan, are you the man for the operating variance report?
Maybe.
Okay.
Simple question, and I may have asked it before, so I apologize if I have, but the year-to-date budget, is that just a straight, like, the full budget divided by 12? Or is it like staggered out at when you expect expenses to come through?
No, it's divided by the month, so for, this would be August, so it's divided by 8.
Okay, okay, so we shouldn't be too concerned if there's like big discrepancies in, you know, the year-to-date budget, year-to-date actuals. As long as like the full year variance is okay?
That's right, yeah,
Okay.
so in a lot of the items, I don't know which particular line item you're looking at, but we prepay for a lot of items, particularly books.
Yeah.
We lease popular titles, and that's prepaid in January, so that cost has to be amortized over 12 months.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Okay, while it's open, anything else for the operating results? See, Dan, I knew it was you. Did great. Okay, let's move, hop right along to presentations and reports. And we'll start with the new Central Library Milestones Update Report.
Yeah,
Yes.
this chair right here.
Please, welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I've attached my report. We had the groundbreaking ceremony on June 20th, and most of you were there. Thank you. And now the things are happening, and we had shovels in the ground on that day, and now we have drills going on to the ground. So the general contractor is there on the site, and the exhibition company is also there on the site. They have some pause for drilling, for shoring, but it will be sorted out in a few days. Yeah, and then the construction begins in full swing.
Exciting.
Yes, yes.
We're dangerously close to getting a library built here, folks. Any questions for Rupinder?
Maybe I'll ask.
Yeah.
I saw that the next steps are gonna be to like start selecting like the building materials and the exterior stuff. Is there anything you wanna share about that?
It's already done, but then the city goes through their FADM department. They go through all the colors that have been selected by the architect and proposed, and there may be some changes, so they will discuss with us and before finalizing those. But most of the color selections and materials, they have been already done. Yeah.
It's just final approval of those things from the city.
Yes, yes, yes.
I just have a question about, it mentions the accessibility coordinator for the city. Were they part of like the pre-stuff, or is this when they get pulled in to kind of advise around accessibility?
It's an ongoing process. Yeah. Because sometimes certain materials you don't get it, and it was COVID, and then what was proposed earlier might have to change.
Yeah.
I'll ask Rupinder, is there anything at this point that we should be watching or that we should be concerned about? Or are you feeling, I was gonna say confident, but are you feeling mostly confident that things are still on track?
It's so far so good, I would say. And the cost, what we have been told that we are still under budget.
Okay, that's comforting news so far. Virtual folks, anything from? Leanne, is that a question or a high?
That's a question. I think that's a hand raise icon. Let me see. Yeah, hand raise. Thanks for the report. As a partner in the Baker District, are we being informed or have any opportunity to engage or comment on the plans for the rest of the district as it affects the library? Like we don't really need to comment on the design of the residential buildings, but the flow of pedestrian and public space does impact the library. Or do we have any role in commenting on that? Or is that going entirely through the city? And Steve, are you like, are they reaching out to you to comment on behalf of the library for things like public space?
That would be a comment or a question for the steering committee, and that hasn't come up yet in the steering committee. All right, so I am aware of some vague developments with the private sector in terms of on that property, but a lot of it is not, is still embargoed at this point in terms of information. So, but as far as, flow of traffic, things like that, that's not something that has come up in discussion yet.
Okay, following up on that, I noticed that there are some designs that are coming out publicly that show public space, and I wondered if we as a board should ask for not the right, but ask for the ability to comment on things like pedestrian access and public space as it affects the library. I think that opens up the lines of communication, and it's an important part of developing the entire site to ensure that the library's needs are protected.
I think that's a good idea. If you want to put that in motion, and I will request, put in a request. I will forward your motion
Sure.
to the steering
Yeah, I mean, I'll move that the CEO be asked to correspond with the project management for the library development to request the ability to comment on designs as they on matters that specifically affect the library.
Barb, did you get all that?
Almost. Hold on.
Do you want me to write it out and just put it in the chat or email it?
The chat is closed, unfortunately, but I have the CEO will be asked to correspond with project management of the library development to request ability to comment on designs.
On site plan matters that affect the library.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And Leanne, if I can just offer up, Barb, I think you want to say the Baker District and not the library project management.
Yeah, city project management.
Is that fair, Leanne? Or I don't want to put words.
Yes, yeah, and we're not looking for design. We don't want to pick the shrubberies. We just want to make sure that the public realm reflects the access to the library.
Okay, Barb, do you want to give us that one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, there was a lot in between there. So she's moving that the CEO be asked to correspond with the Baker District project management team of the library development to request the ability to comment on site plan matters. And then I didn't get the end of that because then there was talking, sorry.
As they affect the library.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we don't want just specifically things that affect the library.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Can I get a seconder for that? Carly, any discussion on that before we move that to a vote? Okay, all in favor then? Okay, carried. Okay, yes,
Can I ask a question about
please.
process? I think now that we're actually getting started and seeing some progress on the site, can I just ask what the process is in terms of, back to, I think, Carla's question, or maybe it was you, Danny, are you feeling confident about things? As the project proceeds, what is the reporting or where does the accountability or managing of kind of timelines, budget, where does that fall at the city relative to council, relative to us? Like, what does that reporting process or accountability look like? Like, do we just get it back here as a report and it's already gone to, the city planning department and perhaps council? And we get a report on that? Do you know what I'm asking? Is that a fair
I
question?
think I do. I think I know what you mean too. And let me say, bottom line here, more or less, your job is done as the board, okay? The previous board
Yeah.
has done all the heavy lifting for you. In terms of reporting, there is no formal reporting back to you except through me.
Okay.
From the city,
Yeah.
okay? And the city has a project management team that's responsible for
And you said that, Steve.
schedules and financing and budget.
Yeah.
Things like that. Okay, so any questions that you have, I will inform you and Rupinder will inform you as well as need be. Now, if there's anything external to that that you are requesting, I mean, you can ask me and I'll attempt to find an answer to that. Okay, but otherwise, I mean, when we say that we are on budget or under budget at this point, that should be enough for you?
Yeah, that's fine, and I am okay with that. I
Yeah.
just wanted, I just wasn't sure what the
Yeah.
kind of infrastructure looked like, not below us, but you know,
Yeah.
that is informing us. So I'm there with
It is a
that.
brother-sister
Thank you.
relationship,
Yeah.
right, between ourselves and council. So,
Yeah. That's perfect, thank you.
Okay, any final questions for Peter? We got back to the upper deck there. Okay, then, can I get a motion, please, to receive his report, for information? Denise and Alexandra, all in favor? That one passes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Can't believe you said out loud that you're not, you're feeling comfortable about stuff, but I'm gonna go with that. It's my natural place to worry about everything. I'm gonna go with you feeling
That's
confident.
the positive outlook from the beginning of it.
Side, I'm happy to provide like photos.
We're gonna,
Develops.
yeah, Denise creating the site, you're live on Denise.
Both starting? I would love that.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I keep waiting for that whole,
Yeah.
the drilling piece was
Yeah.
most recent.
Yeah.
But there are things on the site now, which is
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
change from 2 weeks ago.
And Steve has even requested, we have requested quite a few times to put a camera so that.
Yeah,
so-
it is, it's just, it is it's interesting.
so, Yeah, matter of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I know, right? I know.
Okay, report 6.2, the final 2024 GPL proposed operating budget report. Steve Kraft, Aaron Atkins.
So at this
For
point,
you
yeah,
to-
I'm going to defer to Mr. Atkins, our financial officer, and he will walk you through the operating budget. Okay, there's an empty seat right here, if you'd like to come down, join us. Check which.
Good evening and thank you. Guelph Public Library staff are excited to present the 2024 operating budget and 2025 to 2027 operating forecast. This budget is a transformational budget that will provide the necessary financial resources for the library to eventually move into the new central library in 2026 or 2027. The budget and forecast that we are presenting tonight is a culmination of years of work to develop an operational framework for the new central library. The 2024 operating budget that we are seeking approval for this evening is the foundation of that framework. Next slide, please. So what was the process? As is typical with previous library budget estimates, we have based them on historical multi-year actuals. In addition, library staff have worked with our city partners to begin to understand the full operating costs of the public component of the Baker Street project. In fact, an information report will be going to council next month on the operating impacts of the whole Baker Street project. We've been involved in that, offering our inputs with regard to the cost to operate the library. This budget has also been informed by approved levels of service. On June 19th, 2023, the Guelph Public Library Board approved the new central library staffing expansion and directed staff to implement the hiring as part of the multi-year budget. You will see a lot of that presented this evening. In addition, this budget allows for the realization of the Guelph Public Library's refreshed strategic plan. You will receive more details on the 2024 plans when the 2024 work plan is presented early next year. And finally, this budget also helps the city of Guelph achieve its strategic plan goal of modernizing library service by building a new central library. Next slide, please. The total operating budget request for 2024 is 11,378,782. This reflects an 8.77 increase over 2023. This is one of the largest increases we've had in our operating budget going back to 2010 when we opened our East Side branch. Next slide, please. So what's driving this increase? Well, it's a result of three main factors: compensation, inflation, and staffing expansion as per board direction. Next slide, please. Compensation is increasing by 8.5%. That does not include the expansion piece for the new central library, but those increases are driven by city council approved collective agreement commitments, an assumed cost of living increase for non-unionized staff, as well as an increase in the minimum wage. Next slide, please. Inflation is also impacting our budget. The library is seeing rental increases at two locations in 2024. Both Scottsdale and Westminster are seeing a small increase in rent over the 2023 levels. In addition, book prices and associated processing charges are increasing by approximately 2% over 2023. And finally, city charges are internal charges, those charges that are imposed by the city for things like insurance, West End branch charges, the bookmobile, as well as security are increasing by 16%. Next slide, please. So now to the good stuff. Finally, as part of this approved staffing plan, library staff are recommending the addition of 5 full-time staff next year. The total compensation for these new positions will be $514,221. The library's been working with Blackbird Consulting over the last number of years, and we've identified the need to add 25 additional full-time equivalents to operate the new central library. The management team has ranked the positions and prioritized them based on need. The 5 positions requested for 2024 are the most needed. These positions include a programmer, that's a library programmer, not a computer programmer. As you've seen on our balanced work cards, programming is under a lot of pressure, and this position will be able to add to those programs so that we can provide more programs and have more people attend. We're also seeking a library assistant, clerk, supervisor of archives and record management, and a supervisor of communications. Next slide, please. So the following pie chart shows a breakdown of the 2024 budget. Compensation makes up most of our budget at 68%. Libraries are service industry, and nationally, the public average for staffing in libraries is between 60 and 75%. The Guelph Public Library is in line with the national average, spending approximately 68% of its operating budget on staffing. And that 68% includes the addition of the 5 FTE that we're hopefully going to attain next year. Purchase goods are at 15%. And those are things like utilities, electricity, natural gas, books, online databases, and operating supplies. Purchase services are at 16% of the total budget, and that includes rent, building maintenance, software costs, as well as training. And the final 1% goes to the city for things like insurance, the West End location, bookmobile, as well as security. Next slide, please. The library also collects revenue, and we haven't collected as much revenue as we have in the past now that we've eliminated fines. But that has done a great deal for the community to increase library engagement. And so we're looking at a modest amount of revenue next year. So total user fees are dipping slightly to 136. We've got some product sales, so some paper and some headphones and things that people come in to need. We do generate a little interest on our money that's in the bank. And then we have some external recoveries, which are primarily fundraising. That's a lot of the activities that our development officer is engaging in. You can see that in 2022, we far exceeded the budget, but we've always just kept it at the 68,000 just to make sure that we're able to collect what we budget for. And finally, the grants, 167,000, that is the provincial library operating funding grant. That number has not increased in approximately 20 years and does not seem to be increasing again for next year.
Is that is that based on like a per capita or a?
Good question. So I think it was based on per capita
Of like 20, how many plus years ago?
in 30 years ago, and has not been adjusted. So it, you know, a community like Guelph that has grown significantly, it represents a decreasing percentage of our budget every year. Next slide, please. And so finally, here's the budget forecast with the new central library investment, and as well as the full-time staffing equivalent expansion that we're looking for, as well as the forecasted net budget and the percentage increase. So we're looking at adding the majority of staff in 2025 and 2026. We do realize a little bit of a savings in 2027 as this building comes offline. And so that's offsetting the cost of that one FTE. And so it's a transformational time for our library. It will change the way library service is done in the city for the better. And to point earlier this evening, the work that libraries do is primarily with staff and our engagement with the public. And these staff members, the majority of them will be frontline staff dealing with the public every day. Next slide, please. So that's the 2024 operating budget and the 2025 to 2027 forecast. We're asking this evening that you adopt the proposed operating budget and forecast as presented. Next slide. Happy to entertain any questions.
Questions? Okay, I saw Leanne first off the hop, so please, Leanne, go ahead and let Carly have the next.
Great. My question has to goes back to that formula for operating. And not only has it not changed in years, which I knew, but the complexities of library services are different for post-secondary municipalities and library catchment areas that have post-secondary institutions. I understand 2025 will be when our first class of Conestoga students are coming downtown, and the new central library will also service an entirely new demographic that will be coming to our downtown. How do we advocate for a change in that formula, recognizing that we have now two post-secondary institutions who will be using our library in the downtown?
Libraries across Ontario are certainly aware of this, and there is a group within Ontario Library Services, or I should say within the Canadian Urban Library Council and the subset of SALUBL, CEOs of large urban public libraries who are advocating to make a change. And they are speaking to whoever they can at the ministry. So far, it has fallen on deaf ears.
Okay. I don't want to use all of our board intellectual capacity making statements directing the CEO to, to do advocacy work, but what can we as a board do, Mr. Kraft? Because I think it is going to change usage of the downtown library if we have thousands of students. Now, the University of Guelph has its own library, and obviously academic librarians are servicing that population, but I don't believe that a new library will service I don't believe Conestoga is bringing a new library facility to the downtown with 5,000 more students.
You are correct. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I have two thoughts here in terms of answering your question. The first one is to say, I think what I would like to do is reach out to Conestoga and see what sort of partnership we can make with them. I mean, to support their students. Okay, I think that would be a great idea. The second is I could contact our ministry representative and see what sort of advocacy would best make its way to the minister. Okay, and get back to you on that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, I'm looking for your direction, what you need from us to make your job easier. I know this is a multi-year budget and likely this submission won't change as it's been presented today, so I appreciate that. But I would like more information coming back on, and if you could do that and do that reach out, that would be great.
I'll give you an update for October. How does that sound? Okay? So, good.
Carl.
Yes, I think this is a good place to ask this question. So, year over year, I noticed that, I think the fundraising, I can't remember the language that it's used, it's like $68,000. And then, you know, it's the same again for last year. And I'm just looking at a letter that, was from Steve Kraft in another part of the package, and it talks about the KCI, campaign to raise $3.5 million. And it talks about how we already have $1 million from the Friends, which is awesome. I'm just wondering, you know, looking at those numbers and then looking at the 3.5, is that, where's that? Is that just what the recommendation from KCI was? And is that somewhere else, or is that, I'm just wondering, because those numbers I'm not seeing them match up.
KCI did project that we could raise possibly $3.5 million in a dedicated fundraising campaign for the new central library. The Friends have given us $1 million just recently, and I think we included the news report in your package, okay? The 68,000 is part of what we have raised over many years. We have is it called a bequest fund? What do we have, Viridian, for example? And we've been compiling, you know, that money year after year. Okay, so we have maybe about $1 million ourselves, give or take, something like that. So we are well on the way to raising 3.5 million, as I say, as part of that fundraising campaign. Now, the proper campaign will probably kick off later on this fall. Okay, but those are good announcements to make for that campaign in the hopes of raising the 3.5 million or more. And we don't have a report at this point for you, but I mean, that's something that we will be giving to you in the future, so.
Okay. I have a follow-up question, which is then, is that $68,000 target ambitious enough, knowing that we have this coming up? You know, the campaign and that people, I mean, I'm not KCI, but I would imagine with the anticipation of the new library and marketing and all of the media, it is a good opportunity to raise funds. Is that an ambitious enough target, you know, like as sitting here as a board, looking at, you know, opportunities, just curious about that. Maybe.
That's good. I'll start. Maybe I'm gonna put words in your mouth, Dan, but the 68,000, I think, is a good amount to put there. We never know how much we're gonna raise through our annual fundraising campaign. Okay, so I mean, like, we may get less than that, we may get more than that, but is that correct?
Yeah, so 68,000 is just a simple, like, it's just an in and out. So, so it's just an assumption. It's not a target. It just represents a budget line for
Okay.
fundraising. So last year we raised 150,000. The year before that, we were 300,000+, but it doesn't stay on the operating budget. It gets transferred into the bequest reserve fund. So it's just an accounting, simple in and out. So we're reluctant to put it too high, to Steve's point, that we might not achieve it. And so it's a modest amount, but certainly our goals are much higher than that. And we've surpassed that significantly over the last number of years.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate the explanation.
Other questions for Dan or Steve? I'll go to Ranga first and then Claire, I'll come to you next.
A question to Steve specifically on your statement of the funding from the Ontario provincial government, right? Is there any attempt that we can make towards support for increasing the budget via the Ontario Library Association? Like, we do meet with them quite often, right? So specifically I represent the board in those meetings. So do you think I can request their attention towards this number and, voicing advocacy from their end?
Certainly, you could express to them your the board's awareness of this problem and ask them what sort of efforts they are making towards changing the algorithm.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Thanks, Steve. Claire.
This is a process question. So once this budget is approved, assuming it gets approved in the next few minutes, what happens then? This is just for my being new on the board. Does it go to the city? Where does it?
Once you have given your blessing, then it goes to city finance and it gets presented as part of the budget, the annual budget and forecast as well, so.
Do we anticipate any challenges or pushback on that?
I think Steve's the first thing. Council always comes to the library budget with a number of questions as they review all of the budget submissions.
Correct.
And they use it for planning the taxes, right? The city taxes.
Can I add one point? I'll just say, it's a challenging, I've heard it's gonna be a challenging budget.
Fair enough. yes.
That's all I'll add.
Did you want to add?
Yeah, so just for a little context, in 2026, 2027, the library engaged KPMG to do a business case for the library. That business plan was approved by the library board and it's also approved by city council. That business report assumed that the library budget would increase by $2.2 million. So our expansion request is right at that number. We're at around $2 million. There are a few things that we're still working out with the city with regard to how the building is gonna operate. It's gonna be a city-owned building. And so we don't have all the answers right now about how that building will operate, but as of right now, we are working within that 2.2 million assumption that was previously approved.
Well, and just for a little historical, I guess, board context, this has been an ongoing conversation for a number of years, so we'll have the normal conversation we have, I think, with council around the budget, but I think this isn't news. We're not unveiling news through the budget. It's just,
Huge surprise.
yeah, I mean, having said that, the budget process is the budget process, right? But this is not breaking news to council. This is part of a process that's been going on really since the new library was, even before the approval, in the discussion phase of the new library. So a lot of things can happen at budget night, but it's not new news. Is that fair? Is that
Yes.
a gentle way to put that?
As Mr. Atkins said, this is well within the expected costs of the new library, so.
Denise, did you have a hand up? And then I got Leanne and Rodrigo. I have one for you, so get to you next.
Exactly the same as Claire's with the question of when does it go to either finance committee and or council? What's the timeline for the city budgets?
Goes directly to council in
In November, okay.
and final approval is expected on the total city operating budget for December.
Okay, great, thank you.
Leanne, I will come to you next.
Yeah, just wearing that dual hat and thank you for that historical reminder that this is not news. I only wanted to add that it would be good in the presentation, and I don't know who will be presenting it or how it'll be presented to staff, but remind staff, if you would, that the library has come in below city, the city has asked the library to come in at 0 and less than 2% for many years, and the library board did as it was asked at times of great stress, where mental health and staffing were challenged, and yet we, as a board, came in with budgets according to city parameters, and so it's time to make up for a lot of lost ground, in addition to the opening of our new central library.
Thanks, Liam. I'll refer that to Mr. Atkins and Kraft for their presentation. But I do think, and I think as board members, something that we should keep in mind is, as a community, we've made a fairly monumental investment in this new central library for lots of important reasons and to lots of important and positive effect. And part of this budget process is to make sure that the citizenry get what they pay for, right? Like we don't want to open this library and it not be everything it could be. So part of this is kind of delivering on the promise of the new library. And I think that's important for, we can't take the books from here and half fill the new library, like just for example, right? So I think it is important as we are out there talking to people to contextualize this properly, which is we are making a kind of generational investment in the community and in the downtown, and the budget has to follow along with that so that people get what they were promised. So Rodrigo, to editorialize, over to you, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Could I ask for an outline of the rationale for adding these new positions now versus adding them once the library is open, and to the question, about the kind of things that council will ask. They will ask, well, why are we hiring people now rather than waiting for the new library to open, knowing that the city is going to incur many other expenses, like we're looking at funding more money for homelessness, for housing. Wellington County Social Services has told us that their budget is going to increase by $5 million to deliver the same level of service, which will be passed on to residents. So help me understand why we're hiring the people now rather than waiting until the library is open.
Great question. Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Rodrigo. So two comments. We couldn't possibly hire 25 staff and train them the year that the library opens. We wouldn't be doing justice to the citizens to be training staff when we open a new building. And my second point is we're at capacity now. And so there is no way for us to plan for moving a library and tripling our size without additional staff. I think to Leanne's point, we have kept very modest budgets dating back to 2010. For the last 13 years, we have added 2 staff members. Since 2010, the city of Guelph has grown significantly, and the demand on the service that libraries are providing, specifically in the downtown core, has changed significantly in those 13 years. We need these staff members today so that we can begin to train them and we can begin to plan for moving the library. We also requested 2 supervisors, particularly the archives. That's going to be a huge expansion for us. We need that supervisor in place to begin drafting policies and procedures to operate that facility. So
Okay.
that's why we've elected to phase this approach. And it's also worth noting that this money has already been collected. It has been phased in on the city side. And so it's sitting in a reserve fund currently. And so these people.
And that's to say that in past years, you already told the city, by the way, in 2024, we're going to need this 8% budget increase. Is that correct?
So it wasn't as refined as it was now. We really only learned where the library was going to be located and the size of the library a few years ago. And so we knew we knew that there was gonna be an operating impact, and KPMG alluded to that in their report. So we always knew it was going to be around this $2 million mark for operating the new library. Our phased-in approach that we're looking is new. We did present it to the board in June. And so there is a full 10-page board report with regard to the rationale for our slight change in direction.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, what would be the impact of the increase not being approved? Say council only approved like a 2 or a 3%, not did the full 8%. What would that mean for the opening of the new library and for ongoing operations by the library over the next year?
So the library will still open in 2027. Will there be trained staff, and will it be operating in a way that the community can be proud of? Probably not.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Denise.
One further question, and I apologize, Dan, I think we probably asked you this when you presented the HR plan. But I can't remember, so apologies for that. Do you anticipate any difficulties with hires of any of these or any of the perhaps more specific positions?
Recruitment is a challenge. I might, with Steve's permission, ask our HR manager to speak to your recruitment.
Yeah, so, throughout the library system, we are, through my peers that I'm dealing with at other libraries, we are seeing challenging conditions for hire. We have been an employer of choice within Guelph. So for many of our positions, we have been able to successfully recruit and have been very pleased with the amount of high quality applicants we're getting. In this case, with some of these specialized roles, I do see a long and intense hiring process. So we really need to get those positions approved because in order to get them in place, I do see a longer turnaround time. Just to use the archives as an example, that's a very specialized skill, and there aren't. There's a smaller qualified candidate pool that we would need to attract.
Thank you.
So I do see some challenges, and certainly knowing that we are an HR department of one, there is some challenges to recruitment as well as the ongoing recruitment that we would see as normal attrition.
Thanks, Carol.
And bonus points, Karen, for using the majestic plural there on describing the HR department. Okay, any questions on this round for Dan, because he's keeping himself in the hot seat here for our next item, so. Okay, then Mr. Atkins, I believe you're looking for a motion from us.
Yes.
We just go back to that slide. Maybe it's one or two back from.
Sorry, bear with me a minute.
Sorry, Barb, I put you on the spot there.
You could read it.
Oh, look at that. We've gone to the paper copy here. So the recommendation is that the Guelph Public Library Board adopt the 2024 proposed operating budget and the 2025 to 2027 forecast as presented. Carly and Denise, all in favor? Okay, carried. 6.3, clipping right along here, folks. Final 2024 capital budget request report, and no surprise, David Steve. Go ahead.
You love it.
Barb's just gonna bring up for the viewers at home. So tonight we're presenting the 2024 proposed capital budget and the 2025 to 2033 forecast. Next slide, please. So this year, we have a larger than usual capital request as well. Guelph Public Library staff are recommending a capital budget of $3,270,000 for 2024. This is not quite in line with some of our past capital budgets. We're typically in the $250,000 to $500,000. So it's quite a large increase. And a lot of this has to do with the new central library. Next slide, please. So we're requesting $50,000 for RFID technology. This is mostly to replace some of the aging self-checkouts that we have throughout our branch system. We're looking for $175,000 for information technology upgrades. A large part of that investment will go to improving our cloud-based computing and migrating us to Microsoft Teams and more of a collaborative style work environment. We're looking for $50,000 for main library maintenance. We hope that number is enough to keep the doors open here. We've had some significant challenges over the last number of years. We're trying not to put too much of investment into this building because we'll be coming offline when the library moves, but that said, we still have to keep it open. We have to keep the lights on, we have to keep the heat on, we have to keep the air conditioning on, and keep the elevator operating. So last year, we did have a significant upgrade on the elevator. And we have run into some air conditioning issues as well. It is an original air conditioning unit dating back to 1965. It would be very expensive to replace, and we're hoping that we can keep it going for a few more years. We're also looking for $75,000 for branch upgrades. A large part of that is looking at perhaps replacing some shelving in our West End location, which is now almost 25 years old. And finally, $2.9 million for new central library collections. This would be for the opening day collection for the new central library. So opening day collections typically work in two phases. There's the initial phase, and then all those books will get checked out because everybody's going to be very excited to come to the library. And so then you need a second round to keep the shelves full. That number has been in the capital budget for a long time, so this is not new to the city. Last year, it was in our 2023 budget. It was pushed out to 2024 based on the timelines for the new central library opening. It's possible that city council may push that number out to 2025 with some more certainty around opening dates for the library. Next slide, please. Difficult to read, but we also have a forecast. There's a few things to highlight in the forecast. First being in 2027, there is no longer main branch maintenance, which is something that's really exciting for us. We have some capital dollars earmarked for strategic planning in 2027, as well as 2031, and perhaps looking at a new bookmobile service in 2028. And next slide, please. The recommendation is before you. That the library board adopt the 2024 proposed capital budget forecast as presented.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Do you have a list of the books for the opening day? I actually do have a question, and then I'll go around the room here, which is that 2.9, I got that number right. Assuming that it may or may not get pushed, when is the budget year that becomes a real problem for us? So if we push it out a year, I mean, obviously 2026, it becomes a problem, but is it, if it's not this year, then it must be 2025?
I would think 2025 would be a reasonable year to put, to have that must be in. There's gonna be a lot of planning that has to go into that. Obviously, there's an RFP process that we'll have to follow. Most library book vendors probably won't have a collection of that size, so a lot of material will have to be ordered, and so we'll have to order it well before the opening date of the new library.
Thank you. It's just something that occurred to me is that it would be good for us to know where we have some flex there, because we're gonna have that budget conversation, so. Okay, questions for Dan? I see Rodrigo, and then Claire, I'll come to you, and then to Denise.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Dan, could you help me understand if it's possible to, I mean, the opening date, I hear that it's 2027 that it's opening. Why are we asking for the money for the collection in 2024? Like, would we still keep that money in the bank account, accrue interest off of it, or would we spend it in 2024 and then store all those things for 2 years? What is the plan for the request for that money in the upcoming budget?
So the 2024 request was actually put there by City Council.
Well, no, it was pushed back by city. So why are you moving it now as opposed to asking for it in 2025 or 2026? What is the plan for that money?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
I'm trying to understand why are we asking for the $2.9 million as part of the budget that's coming up, as opposed to waiting until 2026 to ask for that money?
So it was City Council that put it in 2024.
Right, but as a board, you're asking us to approve that. So if I were to move a motion today to defer asking for that money until 2025, so that it's in the 2026 budget year, so we get it a year in advance of the opening, would there be any downside to the planning for the opening of the library?
I don't think so.
Okay, then through you, Mr. Chair, I would like to. Unless I don't know, Steve, if there's any other reason why we wouldn't want to ask for the money now, because it sounds to me like we're not actually going to be using it for a year or two.
That is correct. I mean, like, we could start making use, if it stays in the 2024 column, we could start making use of it in 2024. I mean, prepaying for a lot of material as well. But as Dan said, I mean, like, we certainly can live if council or perhaps you yourself decide to move it to the 2025 column, right? But we don't want to leave it much later than that because, as Dan said, it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of material that we will be purchasing. Well, perhaps is not necessarily, it's not all bestsellers, but it is backstock as well, okay? And so that we may have trouble getting hold of, and you need to make preparations for that, so.
Right. So to my board colleagues, I'm thinking, rather than presenting this as something that City Council can then push back, if we proactively say, well, we're not actually going to be spending the $2.9 million at the library in 2024. Do we consider asking for an amount that we could conceivably spend in putting in those pre-orders, but not ask for money that then is going to sit in a bank account, not being used? And Mr. Chair, I don't know if there's any other comments about this. If not, I'll consider moving a motion.
Steve.
Yes, I mean, Dan, the financial officer just did inform me too, and reminded me that the movement of that 2.9 million into the 2024 column was a city council motion. Does the library board, and I'm not sure about this, does the library board have authority to move it from one column to another?
Thank you for that. And just so that I understand, was that a move by council to move it back because it had been requested in a previous year?
That's correct.
Okay, so then help me understand, why was it requested in the previous year? Is it once again to start ordering things ahead? I'm just wondering, are we gonna keep $3 million in the bank for 3 years?
Well, it's the city who's doing this for us. I mean, but mind you, so they keep pushing, it was pushed back, or I mean, because the start date, the construction of the library was pushed back.
Right, right.
So we're trying to meet the opening of the library, the correct opening date for the library.
Right,
We're
right.
trying to be efficient with the funds, I believe, so.
Right, so I think as a board member, I would feel more comfortable asking for the money that we're going to use. And then I defer to the treasurer or the CAO, or the CEO of the library. You know, what would be a reasonable amount that we could use for pre-orders in 2024, and then provide that information to city council.
Yeah, 2025 is fine, so.
Yeah. Okay. And do any of other board members have any concerns about before I move a motion to defer the 2.9 million to the next year's budget?
I guess, is it fine to move all of it to the next year's budget? Is it, risk aversion strategy to split it between 2024 and 2025? Is it gonna be an easier pill for the city council to swallow if it's split between 2 years? These are all questions I don't have answers to.
I would leave the full amount as 2.9, okay, I mean, like, don't, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't cause hardship to move it into 2025.
I'm not too sure whether we have the authority to move it into 2025 or not.
So
Okay.
the city council decision to move it into 2024.
It's
From what year?
It was from
From 2023, yes.
To 2024. So we presented what was already approved. The board, I believe, would have the authority to move it into 2020.
It's our proposed
It's
budget.
our proposed budget.
So do we anticipate city asking us to move it again by doing it in advance, so we don't have to do the dance again?
As long as there is a, like must be. You can't continue, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to be, as you said, Dan, at 2026 and scrambling to open for 2027. So it would be, the recommendation would have to come with some type of language that would say, but not beyond approval in 2025. Which may, that may even limit in terms of some of your implementation plans between now and even then, right?
Does this have something, like, I guess maybe I had it in my mind. There's a multi-year budget that's coming to council, that's gonna cover the next 3 years. Is part of getting this in now also to make sure that it's in that, like, are we gonna come back with more capital asks? Or I'm just trying to understand, because like, you know, I know that some things have been spread out with the library over the time, and it's then been pushed back. Is that part of this?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So just thinking out loud here, so this number has been in our budget since the KPMG report in 2016, 2017. The library was supposed to open in 2020, and so it's moved a little bit. It was in our 2023 budget, and city council moved it to the forecast. So we are now presenting a budget, which we're looking for approval. So the board is approving the 2024 budget this evening. So the board would have the authority to move it into the forecast into 2025 if it elected to do so.
Well, and just to be clear, the reason council moved it is because the timeline for the new library moved. So it moved a year forward in concert with the opening date moving.
That's right.
Cast my memory back there, okay? It's over to you, Rodrigo, I guess. So, for what it's worth,
Leanne has a question.
oh, sorry, Leanne, I see your icon now, go ahead. Leanne, can you hear us? Okay, well, she sorts that out. For what it's worth, I am happy to defer to staff and have the conversation with council. Like, I think the closer we get to the opening date, the closer we get to things going wrong, and the less time we leave ourselves. And you know, this is a big project with a lot of levers being pulled. I mean, this might be my own risk aversion. I'm a little bit hesitant to shrink our windows any more than we have to make sure that when this place opens, that it opens properly. So again, we can have a discussion, we can put something on the floor, but I think we would do well to just consider how much runway we're able to give staff to make sure that the new library opens with its best foot forward, let me say. Leanne, did we get you back? Have I tap danced enough for you to try and get your?
I texted her as well, and I didn't hear.
Okay, she might have had to jump on. I do believe.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
With the 2.9 million, and I think Rodrigo asked this, but would we be pre-ordering those books and they would be sitting somewhere? Or are we just gonna hold the money, or could the collection be used in our current branches, or maybe there's not space for that? Like, what would that look like?
So we would pre-order,
Yeah.
and it would likely sit in a warehouse,
Specifically for the new central?
well, at the book vendors.
Oh, I see.
Warehouse.
Okay.
We're not storing.
We're not,
What is really concerned?
yes, and I wouldn't recommend using that capital budget to purchase material for current location.
Yeah.
Because, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, we have budget line item to deal with, book supply in the current system. So this is purely a new main branch line item.
Open day collection, yeah.
So now projected opening is 2027. I think not too long ago, 2026. Is that kind of, because I start to feel uncomfortable because like 2025, you know, we'll push it out to 2025, let's say. But are we aiming to open 2026 or 27? Like, I guess like that's where I'm, because yeah, I don't know the timelines for ordering, but keep pushing.
Mhm.
And also, if there's no materials, like, if you're aiming for 26.
Late 2026, the architect has proposed 2027. Okay, so somewhere in there, it's still fuzzy. Okay, so if you have a crystal ball, you know, but I mean, those are the dates that we're working with right now.
I mean, what is done, as Adam say, time is an illusion and much time does we so. Okay, Leanne, you're back, we got you. Did someone chase you out of the
No.
there?
Sorry, I had a sudden family phone call about a dog that's being put down, so I apologize.
No.
My question was, I mean, I'm willing to put the recommendation on the floor as presented because I appreciate where Rodrigo's coming from, but this is a library board recommendation. If city council moved it from 23 to 24, city council can move it from 24 to 25, but we have to put our best recommendation as a board. So we as councillors, we can vote for something here at the board, and we can vote for something completely different at council. And what it does by leaving it, the recommendation as presented by the board, is it puts our best recommendation on the floor for what the library needs. And then if the city has a larger financial or fiscal pressure, then the question will come up during the presentation, and Mr. Kraft will, answer the question at council about the implications and if we moved it to 2025. But I do appreciate the conversation about acquisitions, because it does take a lot of advanced planning, to move forward with those acquisitions. So I think we should leave the recommendation from staff as is. And then as members of council, we can take it from there when it comes into that different arena. Keeping in mind that if we move it to 2025, I'm not convinced the city's multi-year budget is going to be any better in 2025. We're still going to be dealing with problems of housing and mental health and all kinds of other financial pressures in 2025. So even if the result is that we split it between 2024 and 2025, again, that's up to council. But I think as a board, we have to put forward what staff have recommended.
It's super helpful. Thank you. Rodrigo, I'm going to come back to you to see if you want to go to that motion or whether we'll go the other way.
Yep. No, thank you, through you, Chair. No, I'm now comfortable understanding that this is a placeholder, but there is some flexibility for council to work with. I'll leave it as is. Thank you.
Okay, then Mr. Atkins would like to, if I can find it in my notes here. Oh, look at Steve taking great care of me over here. That the Guelph Public Library Board adopt the 2024 proposed capital budget and the 20 to 2033 forecast as presented. Maybe that has a, what should that start with? That should be the 2025. Sorry, the 2025 to 2033 forecast as presented. I've got Candace and then Carmen, all in favor. Okay, passed. Hang on, I'll scroll back up to my agenda here. This is really fun to watch me work the computer. Okay, we have now reached the portion where we have to enter. I'm going to read this because I will never get this right. So we have a recommendation that the Guelph Public Library Board now hold a meeting that is closed to the public pursuant to the Public Libraries Act, section 16.14. A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if that subject matter being considered is, and it falls under item D, labor relations or employee negotiations. So that motion, please, thank you. Claire? Yeah, you're doing great, Carl. I'm gonna give you that second on that. And all in favor? It was Carly.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are now moving into closed session. So we'll take one minute as people kind of do what they need to.
In video.
Okay, we'll give you a second. I'm just gonna check that the
Do I go to a different meeting, virtual meeting, or do I stay here?
No, so I'm going to send you into a virtual one. It may come up and ask you if you would like to join, and I ask that you join. was impressed with me so much with more like new groups around things. I was just.
It's,
There.
look at that, like clockwork. Okay, folks that stuck around on the line, thank you, we're back. We have no new business from the executive this month, though we expect a couple updates in October. Anyone else around the table with any new business? Denise?
It's not new business, but I just, I have to recommend or suggest to the board. I just read over the summer, it's called the library book. And I don't know if the board has
Susan
read
Lee?
it. Yes. And I'm sure I'm late to the party on that, but just a recommendation. It's a fantastic read, and it, as a new board member, it really just, it talks about so much of the things we as a board hear from the staff in terms of the challenges that our staff have in terms of what the library means to our community. But also who we need to be as a community partner and an integral organization in the community. So I can't recommend it more highly, if anyone hasn't yet read it, so.
We're halfway to the library board book club.
I'll just add to that, she also wrote a great book on Rin Tin Tin. If you're a dog lover, read that book.
All right, I'm gonna move us to unfinished business, because I feel like this is not a group to get wound up on folks they read this summer.
Correct.
Carly's got a whole stack of reports there. Any unfinished business that we have not yet addressed in another section? Ken?
Did Ryan send you any sort of update about the board retreat, which will be happening before our next meeting?
So as I understand in speaking with Ranlin briefly, we are in the largely complete phase, and I would expect some information to be coming out shortly, probably through Barb.
I mean, Michelle, can you update us on that at all or not?
So, October 14th, 10 to 3, AM session will be the community partner type people on a panel as, talking about challenges and opportunity to have a Q&A. And then, lunch, and then afternoon is, somebody from the Interior Library Service who will be talking about getting you sort of prepared to do new strategic planning, like what to do in that case. Talking you through that, so he's coming to do that. East Side Library in the meeting room. Not sure how much has been shared, I can't quite remember, so, yeah.
Thank you for that, Michelle.
No
And
problem.
like I say, more details in the very near future. Anything else? Before I do everybody's favorite, Leanne.
More of a question, and not necessarily a board matter, but I wondered if we're doing anything in the library for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on Saturday, September 30th.
That's a terrific question.
Orange t-shirts for all staff. Are there special books on display? Just more of a public service announcement since Adam is still online.
All of the above. Michelle could probably inform us again. Michelle is go ahead, Michelle.
So, yes, we've had orange shirts for many years for staff and reinvigorated those again this year for new staff. And we always purchase from an official supplier where money actually goes, $10 of every shirt goes back to residential school survivors and to the organization, the Orange Shirt Society organization. I've encouraged staff to wear it Friday and Saturday, the 29th and 30th, because there are programs happening here on the 29th and 30th. So we have James Gordon doing recorded Indigenous story time, I think on the Friday, and that's for all ages. And then Saturday, we have him doing something with his new book that he released last year, but also we have a beaded, an Indigenous person doing beading who has done beading workshops at the Guelph Museum as well. So that program. And then we have displays, like in all our branches, we will have displays of like reading material related for, residential schools and Indigenous people. And, we also have, so we'll do social media posts and things like that. Lisa will be working on that as well, so.
Wonderful, thank you. And I knew it would be a fulsome answer of activities and thanks for that.
And I suspect, Michelle, more information on our website.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, once more around the horn, any last items, Ranga?
Yeah, so this is not an unfinished business, but a new business, right? I wanted to propose. What is our outlook towards sustainability, right? Like, obviously, all the organizations around the globe are focusing on how they will, be more greener, how they can be operating in a more sustainable way, right? So library being the forefront in the community, how we are going to lead that, journey, right? So do we have a plan around it, or should we think around how we envision sustainability for Guelph Public Library?
So can I suggest, Ranga, that I think that is a great question and deserves a more fulsome conversation that we're gonna give it toward the end of this meeting. So is that something that, Steve, that you could either through you or through staff give us some details on in a future meeting?
Sure, and that's something you might consider for the new strategic plan as well, so, yeah, okay, so, thank you, that's a good point.
Can we say maybe either October or November? Is that give enough time to give us maybe a
Probably
brief
November or the first quarter of 2024, something like that too, okay?
Perfect.
So, yeah.
Randy, does that suffice?
Will we pass that as a motion to consider for the next strategic plan, or we just?
I don't know that we need a motion for consideration. I think we can bring that into our strategic planning discussion. And then we're gonna end up with a motion at the end to approve the strategic plan. Steve, is that the?
That's true. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Going once, twice, thrice. Okay, next meeting, Monday, October 30th, 2023. Same bat time, same bat channel. And other than that, we just need a motion to adjourn. Alexandra and Ranga. All in favor? All right, folks. Thanks. This is the first library meeting I've chaired, and it went, you know. What, folks? It's 7:39.
Great, you good.
Did great.
Or your money back. Folks online, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye.
See you next time.